Dear students, in this chapter we will discuss about the petroleum deposits in India. To begin with, let us first briefly understand what exactly petroleum is and its formation. Petroleum is a naturally occurring yellow to black liquid found in geological formation beneath the Earth's surface, which is commonly refined into various types of fuels. Petroleum occurs in the sedimentary rocks. Petroleum consists of hydrocarbons. Petroleum is essentially a compound of carbon and hydrogen, or rather a mixture of such compounds in an incomprehensible variety. Petroleum is thus really a mixture of various kinds of hydrocarbons with small amount of oxygen, nitrogen and a little sulfur. Petroleum varies greatly in color. Some are colorless. Many of them are of nice bluish color, green color, while others are pitch black in color. Petroleum has assumed utmost significance in modern society. Petroleum and petroleum products are used for a variety of purposes such as automotive power, lubrication, and as raw material for manufacturing synthetic derivatives and chemicals required by other industries. The name petroleum covers both naturally occurring unprocessed crude oil and petroleum products that are made up of refined crude oil. Petroleum is a fossil fuel which is formed when large quantities of dead organisms, usually zooplankton and algae. These microorganisms settle down on the sea floor along with sediments like silt and sand. Due to subsequent burial and increasing temperature and pressure, they turn into petroleum and associated hydrocarbons. Petroleum deposits occur both on land called onshore deposits and on the oceans called offshore deposits. Natural gas refers to naturally occurring gaseous hydrocarbons generally produced in association with crude oil. The refining of crude oil is done in refineries during which petroleum, diesel, kerosene, asphalt, paraffin wax and lubricants are separated. Petroleum is recovered mostly through oil drilling, which has natural petroleum springs are very rare. This comes after the studies of structural geology, sedimentary basin analysis and reservoir characterization. It is refined and separated most easily by distillation into a large number of consumer products from gasoline and kerosene to asphalt and chemical reagents used to make plastics and pharmaceuticals. Petroleum is used in manufacturing a wide variety of materials and it is estimated that the world consumes about 90 million barrels each day. Petroleum deposits in India occur in the rocks of Tertiary age, which is around 50 to 20 million years old. The important deposits are Bombay High, Cambay, Ankleshwar, Digboy and Naharkatia. Recently, important petroleum and natural gas deposits have been discovered in Krishna Godavari Basin and in Barmer of Rajasthan. With this information about petroleum, let us now discuss further about various aspects of petroleum oil in India. Formation and composition of petroleum. As mentioned earlier, petroleum is formed under the Earth's surface by decomposition of marine organisms. The remains of tiny organisms that live in sea and to a lesser extent those of land organisms that are carried down to sea in rivers and of plants that grow on the ocean bottoms are trapped with the fine sands and silts that settle to bottom in the sea basins. Such deposits, which are rich in organic materials, become the source rocks for the generation of crude oil. The process began many million of years ago with the development of abundant life, and it continues to this day. The sediments grow thicker and sink into the sea floor due to their own weight. As additional deposits pile up, the pressure on the ones below increases several thousand times and the temperature rises by several hundred degrees. The mud and sand harden into shale and sandstones. Carbonate precipitates and skeletal shells harden into limestone. And the remains of dead organisms are transformed into crude oil and natural gas. Once the petroleum forms, it flows upwards in the earth's crust because of it has a lower density than the sea waters that saturate the gaps of shales, sands and carbonate rocks that constitute the crust of earth. The crude oil and natural gas rise into the microscopic pores of coarser sediments lying above. Frequently, the rising material encounters an impermeable shale or dense layer of rock that prevents further migration. The oil has become trapped and a reservoir of petroleum is formed. A significant amount of the upward migrating oil, however, does not encounter impermeable rock but instead of flows out at the surface of earth or onto the ocean floor. Surface deposits also include bituminous lakes and escaping natural gas. Abiogenic and biogenic petroleum origin theory. The hypothesis of abiogenic petroleum origin holds that petroleum was formed by primordial non-biological process deep in the earth's crust and mantle. It contradicts the more widely held view that petroleum is a fossil fuel produced from buried remains of ancient living organisms. The French chemist Marcelin Berthelot and the Russian chemist Dmitry Mendeleev proposed it is in the 19th century and saw a revival in the last half of the 20th century by Russian and Ukrainian scientists. The modern scientific consensus of abiogenic origin petroleum is that while there is evidence for it, most modern geologists do not support this for the vast majority of petroleum deposits within the earth. The deep biogenic petroleum theory proposes, mostly after the work of Thomas Gold, that the deep hot biosphere may be the source of some petroleum alteration and for the observation of biomarkers in produced petroleum. Other planets of the solar system or their moons have large amounts of methane and other hydrocarbons, presumably not of biological origin. Composition of petroleum. In its strictest sense, petroleum includes only crude oil, but in common usage, it includes all liquid, gaseous and solid hydrocarbons. Under surface pressure and temperature conditions, lighter hydrocarbons, methane, ethane, propane and butane occurs as gases, while pentane and heavier ones are in the form of liquid or solids. However, in an underground oil reservoir, the proportions of gas, liquid and solid depend on subsurface conditions and on the phase diagram of the petroleum mixture. An oil well produces predominantly crude oil with some natural gas dissolved in it. Because the pressure is lower at the surface than underground, some of the gas will come out of the solution and be recovered as associated gas or solution gas. The gas well produces predominantly natural gas. However, because of the underground temperature and pressure are higher than at the surface, the gas may contain heavier hydrocarbons such as pentane, hexane and heptane in the gaseous state. At surface conditions, these will condense out of the gas to form natural gas condensate, often shortened to condensate. Condensate resembles petrol in appearance and is similar in composition to some volatile light crude oils. The proportion of light hydrocarbons in the petroleum mixture varies greatly among different oil fields, ranging from as much as 97% by weight in the lighter oils to as little as 50% in the heavier oils and bitumens. The hydrocarbon in crude oil are mostly alkanes, cycloalkanes, and various aromatic hydrocarbons, while the other organic compounds contain nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur, and trace amounts of metals such as iron, nickel, copper, and vanadium. History of oil industry in India. The history of Indian oil industry extends back to period of British Raj, at a time when petroleum first became a primary global energy source. Colonial Rule 1858 to 1947. The first oil deposits in India were discovered in 1889 near the town of Digboi in the state of Assam. The Assam Railway and Trading Company had recently opened an area for the trade by building a railway and later finding oil nearby. The first well was completed in 1890 and the Assam Oil Company was established in 1899 to oversee production. At its peak during the Second World War, the Digboi oil field were producing 7,000 barrels per day. At the turn of the century, however, as the best and the most profitable uses for oil were still being debated, India was seen not as a producer but as a market, most notably for fuel oil for cooking. As the potential application for oil shifted from domestic to industrial and military usage, this was no longer the case, and apart from its small domestic production, India was largely ignored in terms of oil diplomacy and even written off by some of the hydrocarbon barons. Despite this, however, British colonial rule laid down much of the country's infrastructure, most notably the railways. Independence, which is 1947 to 1991. After India won independence in 1947, the new government naturally wanted to move away from the colonial experience, which was regarded as exploitative. In terms of economic policy, this meant a far bigger role for the state. This resulted in a focus on domestic industrial and agricultural production and consumption, a large public sector, economic protectionism, and central economic planning. The foreign companies continued to play a key role in the oil industry. Oil India Limited was still a joint venture involving the India government and the British-owned Burma Oil Company. Vizil Indo-Stanwak Petroleum project in West Bengal was between the Indian government and the American company Socony Vacuum. This changed in 1956 when the government adopted an industrial policy that placed oil as a scheduled industry and put its future development in the hands of the state. In October of 1959, an Act of Parliament was passed which gave the state-owned Oil and Natural Gas Commission, which is ONGC, the powers to plan, organize and implement programs for development of oil resources and the sale of petroleum products, and also to perform plans sent down from central government. In order to find the expertise necessary to reach these goals, foreign experts from West Germany, Romania, USA and the Soviet Union were brought in. The Soviet experts were the most influential and they drew up detailed plans for further oil exploration which were to form part of second 5-year plan. India thus adopted the Soviet model of economic development and the state continues to implement 5-year plans as part of its drive towards modernity. The increased focus on exploration resulted in the discovery of several new oil fields, most notably the offshore Bombay High field, which remains by a long margin India's most productive well. Liberalization 1991 to present day. The process of economic liberalization in India began in 1991 when India defaulted on her loans and asked for a $1.8 billion bailout from IMF, which is International Monetary Fund. This was a trickle-down effect of culmination of Cold War era, marked by the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union, India's main trading partner. The bailout was done on condition that the government initiative further reforms, thus paving the way for India's emergence as a free market economy. For the ONGC, this meant being reorganized into a public limited company. It is now called for Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, and around 2% of the government held stocks were sold off. Despite this, however, the government still plays a pivotal role, and ONGC is still responsible for 77% of oil and 81% of gas production, while the Indian Oil Corporation owns most of the refineries, putting it within the top 20 oil companies in the world. The government also maintains subsidized prices. As a net importer of oil, however, India faces the problem of meeting the energy demands for its rapidly expanding population and economy. To this, the ONGC has pursued drilling rights in Iran and Kazakhstan and has acquired shares in exploration ventures in Indonesia, Libya, Nigeria, and Sudan. Petroleum in India. India had about 125 million metric ton of proven oil reserves as of April 2010, or 5.62 billion barrels as per EIA, which is Energy Information Administration estimate for 2009, which is the second largest amount in Asia Pacific region behind China. Most of India's crude oil reserves are located in western coast and in the northeastern part of the country, although considerable undeveloped reserves are also located in offshore Bay of Bengal and in the state of Rajasthan. The combination of rising oil consumption and fairly unwavering production levels leaves India highly dependent on imports to meet the consumption needs. In 2010, India produced an average of about 33.69 million metric ton of crude oil as on April 2010, or 877,000 barrels per day as per EIA estimate of 2009. During 2006, India consumed an estimated of 2.63 MBBL per day of oil. The EIA estimates that India registered oil demand growth of 1 lakh BBL per day during 2006. As of 2013, India produces 30% of India's resources, mostly in Rajasthan. India's oil sector is dominated by state-owned enterprises, although the government has taken steps in past recent years to deregulate the hydrocarbons industry and support greater foreign involvement. India's state-owned Oil and Natural Gas Corporation is the largest oil company. ONGC is the leading player in India's upstream sector, accounting for roughly 75% of the country's oil output during 2006. As per Indian government estimates. As a net importer of all oil, the India government has introduced policies aimed at growing domestic oil production and oil exploration activities. As part of the effort, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas crafted the new exploration license policy in 2000, which permits foreign companies to hold 100% equity possession in oil and natural gas projects. However, to date, only a handful of oil fields are controlled by foreign firms. India's downstream sector is also dominated by state-owned entities, though private companies have enlarged their market share in past recent years. Important sedimentary basins of India. The sedimentary basins of India, on land and offshore up to 200 meter isobar, have an areal extent of about 1.79 million square kilometer. So far, 26 basins have been recognized and they have been divided into 4 categories based on their degree of prospectivity as presently known. In the deep waters beyond the 200 meter isobar, the sedimentary area has been estimated to be about 1.35 million square kilometer. The total thus works out to 3.14 million square kilometer, of which about 30% is unexplored. Although this appears to be a seizable proportion, it is marked improvement over the corresponding figures of 50% in 1995-96. Also, exploration has been initiated in about 33% of unexplored areas with regard to 18% in 1995-96. Thus, across 8 years, there have been significant forward steps in exploring the hydrocarbon potential of the sedimentary basins of India. Credit for this achievement goes in large measure to surveys carried out by DGH in unexplored or poorly explored areas of the country, especially deep waters off West Coast, East Coast and Andaman Sea. Based on these surveys, blocks were carved out and offered under various rounds of NELP for exploration of oil and gas. This is responsible for the above mentioned reduction from 50% to 30% in unexplored areas. The unexplored area will further be reduced to 28% with the award of block identified for NELP-V round, for which data package have been prepared during the year 2003-04. Categorization of sedimentary basins. Category up to 200 meter, basin isobar, basinal square kilometer on land, offshore area and total areas. First is Cambay, which has on land of 51,000 square kilometer, offshore 2,500 square kilometer. Totally it covers 53,500 square kilometers. Assam Shelf 56,000 and 56,000. Bombay offshore, it has offshore of 1,16,000 and total area of 1,16,000. Krishna Godavari, which has on land of 28,000, offshore of 24,000, totally 52,000. Kaveri has on land 25,000, offshore 30,000, totally 55,000. Assam Arkan Fold Belt, which has on land 60,000 and total of 60,000 square kilometers. Rajasthan has 1,26,000, total area is 1,26,000. Subtotal is 3,46,000 of on land and 1,72,000 of offshore. Totally 5,18,000 of total area. Second category is Kutch. On land is 35,000, offshore is 13,000 and total is 48,000. Mahanadi NEC, on land is 55,000, offshore is 14,000, total is 69,000. Andaman Nicobar, on land is 6,000, offshore is 41,000, totally of 47,000 square kilometers. Subtotal is 96,000 square kilometers on land and 68,000 square kilometer offshore. Totally 1,64,000. Himalayan foreland, which has on land of 30,000, no offshores. Totally it is 30,000. Ganga has 1,86,000 on land, no offshores. Its total is 1,86,000. Vindhyan is 1,62,000 and total is 1,62,000 itself. Saurashtra has 60,000 on land, 20,000 offshore. Totally it is 80,000 square kilometers. Kerala, Konkan and Lakshadweep, it doesn't have any on land square kilometers, but it has offshore of 94,000 and total is 94,000. Bengal has 57,000 on land, 32,000 offshore. Totally it is 89,000 square kilometers. Subtotal is around 5,42,000 on land, 1,68,000 offshore. Totally it is 7,10,000 square kilometers. In the section 4 we have Karewa, 3,700 on land, no offshores. Total is 3,700. Spiti Zanskar, which has 22,000 on land, no offshore. Total is 22,000. Next is Satpura South Rewa Damodar, which has 46,000 on land, no offshore. Total is 46,000. Next is Narmada, which has 17,000 on land, no offshore. Total is 17,000. Next is Deccan Sink Line, which has 2,73,000 on land, no offshore. Total is 2,73,000. Next in the section 5 we have Bhima Kaladgi, which has 8,500 on land, no offshore. Total is 8,500. Kadapa, which has 39,000 on land, no offshore. Total is 39,000. Next is Pranita, which has 15,000 on land, no offshore. Total is 15,000. Next is Bastar, which has 5,000 on land, no offshore. Total is 5,000. Next comes the Chhattisgarh, which has 32,000 on land, no offshore. Total is 32,000 square kilometers. Subtotal is around 4,61,200 square kilometers on land, no offshore, and total comes up to 4,61,200 square kilometers. Total is 13,90,200 on land and 3,94,500 offshore, total of which is 17,84,700 square kilometers. Deep waters includes Kori Komorin 85 degree east and Narko Dam, and grand total of which is 31,34,700 square kilometers. Total reserves of the hydrocarbons are estimated by Geological Survey of India at 17 billion tons, of which 75% have been established so far. For exploration of petroleum wells, were drilled in Upper Assam Valley in 1866, just 7 years after the discovery of petroleum in Pennsylvania in USA. Oil was discovered in 1890 in Digboy area. Only Assam produced petroleum in the country until 1959, when Kambat oil field was discovered in 1958 and the first well was drilled in Ankleshwar in 1960. First offshore drilling was started in 1970 at Aliabit in Gujarat. Later, the Bombay High was discovered in 1975 and production from this area started in 1976. As a result of these efforts, production of petroleum in the country increased rapidly. Environmental effects. Because petroleum is a naturally occurring substance, its presence in the environment need not be the result of human causes such as accidents and routine activities. Phenomena such as seeps and tar pits are examples of area that petroleum affects without man's involvement. Regardless of source, petroleum's effects when released into the environment are similar. Ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is the increase in the acidity of the Earth's ocean caused by uptake of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This increase in acidity inhibits life such as scallops. Global warming. When burned, petroleum releases carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas. Along with the burning of coal, petroleum combustion is the largest contributor to the increase in the atmospheric CO2. Atmospheric carbon dioxide has risen steadily since the Industrial Revolution to current level of over 390 ppmv, which is parts per million by volume, from 180 to 300 ppmv of the prior 800,000 years, driving global warming. The unbridled use of petroleum could potentially cause a runaway greenhouse effect on Earth. Use of oil as an energy source has caused Earth's temperature to increase by nearly 1 degree Celsius. This rise in the temperature has reduced the Arctic ice cap to 28 lakh square kilometers, smaller than ever recorded. Because of this melt, more oil reserves have been revealed. It is estimated by International Energy Agency that about 13% of the world's undiscovered oil resides in the Arctic. Summary. Oil reserve is an essential yardstick for measuring a country's economic prosperity. The Indian economy is at critical stage of development. During 2012-13, the growth rate of gross domestic product, which is GDP, at current prices is estimated to have increased by 5%, with industry at 2.1%, services at 7.1% and agriculture at 1.9%. There has been an overall slowdown since 2010-11 when GDP increased by 9.3% and declined to 6.2% in 2011-12. As against the overall trend in growth of the Indian economy, the energy requirement continued to increase during this phase. Given the limited domestic availability of oil and gas, the country is compelled to import over 75% of its domestic requirement. The Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has taken several measures for enhancing exploration and exploitation of petroleum resources, apart from developing the distribution and marketing of petroleum products. The use of fossil fuels such as petroleum has negative impact on Earth's biosphere, releasing pollutants and greenhouse gases into the air and damaging ecosystem through events such as oil spills. Concern over the depletion of Earth's finite reserves of oil and the effect this would have on a society dependent on it is a concept known as peak oil.